In space, no one can hear you roll badly, which is a very good possibility in this Mad Musings, as I'm actually looking at a recent game for once. Free League's Alien RPG. It's the prequel sequel to the Aliens RPG by Leading Edge Games. While Alien has twice the length, 7 times the characters, and countless more options than the first attempt at this setting, it also only does have 0.0004% the number of tables, which is probably a good thing. So how does this game grab you? Is it worth going to war over? I'm Mr. Welch, and it's time to take an express elevator to hell. Going down. The book is quite large, almost 400 full-color pages in length. Thomas Herenstam is credited as the game designer, Andrew Gaska is the writer, Martin Grip did the art, and Christian Granoth did the graphic design. Free League Press is a Swedish company known for games like Vaesen, Forbidden Lands, and Crusader Kings. It was printed in 2019 after a rather successful Kickstarter, and you can find it on shelves now in certain stores and, of course, online. The game is set after the second movie, using the official storyline presented by Weyland-Yutani's spin doctors that hold to the events of Aliens 3, instead of the actual truth of what happened, which was detailed by Dark Horse Comics in their Aliens line. Look, Alien 3 was a train wreck. It's okay to admit it. The movie was sabotaged by epic levels of executive meddling that was detailed in the movie Wreckage and Rage, a 3-hour making-of movie about a 2.5-hour movie. David Fincher went on to make some classics like Fight Club and Seven, but even he couldn't salvage the train wreck having to splice together multiple scripts and pick up after the previous directors who got fired. Nobody faults anybody but the studio executives for Alien 3. And if you want to throw that movie out to go with the superior Dark Horse storyline, do it. Besides, as soon as Neil Blomkamp gets his Alien 3.1 movie done, all the official canon is getting rewritten anyways. The game itself is a class-based system using a stat skill mechanic. The game only uses D6s and playing cards. The system is the Bounce 6 system, similar to, I believe it was 4th edition Shadowrun. You're trying to roll 6s on the dice. Each 6 you roll is a success, and the rest of the numbers don't matter, with one exception. The game has a fear mechanic that is the standout creation in the game, which is the stress die. If you get spooked, you gain a stress die. This counts as a regular die that adds to your roll as your adrenaline kicks in, but if you roll a 1 on the stress die, you have a chance of panicking. The more stressed and panicked you are, the harder you fight, but the more likely you're going to flip out and make a mistake in the heat of passion. There's multiple ways to gain and remove stress, and your total level is going to fluctuate wildly in play. The game does sell thematic dice and playing cards, which were designed for this game, but you can get by with just regular playing cards and regular dice, just as long as the stress dice and the other dice aren't the same color. Alien is pure space survival horror, and the game does reflect that well. Don't get too attached to your characters. You are running on very few hit points, and guns are incredibly lethal. And getting shot is a small mercy in this universe. It focuses on the survival part by making you keep track of 4 different commodities in the game: air, food, water, and power. If you're in a location where you don't have free access to these, every time you use a resource or exert yourself, you have to check to see if you use up a commodity. Then the game becomes a question of how much you can press your luck, as dehydration and starvation are legitimate ways to die. For horror, you've got several alien bad guys. The game does devote a large section to the eponymous monster. I wish they'd given you more monsters in the core book instead of just the few that you do get. You can only face xenomorphs so many times before you're going to get bored of them. I know people are going to want Predators to face, and the Alien and Predator license are now both owned by Disney, but I don't think Free League is going to be able to afford both the licenses. Would be fantastic if they did. Just saying, don't hold your breath. The game does have the Harvesters, which I believe were created for the Leading Edge Aliens game. I haven't seen them referenced at any point before that. These are giant burrowing monsters that could destroy entire colonies from below. The game does need an in-depth creature source book to give the game mother. The GM name is taken from the Nostromo's computer. More things to hunt players with. The world of Alien, as you can expect, is bleak. Colonists are scraping out meager existences while the corporations take everything of value. What is nice is the detail on the history of the Alien universe the game gives us. You find out how far humanity is spread, the role of corporations in the spread of humanity, and who exactly the colonial marines are. You find out why you have to go into cryosleep when you go to FTL, and the answer is you go insane if you're not in cryosleep. The game points out that there are 3 governments ruling mankind: the United Americas, the 3 world empires, and the Union of Progressive Peoples, or North and South America versus England and Japan versus China and Russia. There's a depression going on, so jobs are scarce, and people work for the corporation because they have no other options. Human space is very dark and very dangerous, but that's where all the action happens. There's actually safe and prosperous worlds closer to Earth that have been terraformed and nice places to live, but those are boring to play in, so they don't get a lot of mention. Aesthetically, the book is beautiful. It is a creepy, almost out-of-focus artwork that captures the lived-in feel of the universe. It talks about how the biggest threat to humanity is humanity itself. Alien species are rare, and outside of the engineers, there's no other sentient races that we know of. Even the engineers are more of a background event than an actual threat. Players are going to find the biggest day-to-day threat is other humans. You've got pirates, corporate sabotage, environmental disasters, and these are all going to threaten you far more than xenomorphs or harvesters. The game does use playing cards to keep track of initiative. It's an interesting mechanic, but the fact that initiative is based almost entirely on luck is a bit of a drawback. The ability to push or try harder if you first fail is a good mechanic. You simply add a level of stress and re-roll the dice. If you succeed, then the second effort was enough. If you fail, you can't try again. In either case, you keep the new level of stress. The encumbrance system limits you to a certain number of normal-sized items equal to your strength. Weight is not calculated at all. It does remind me of the grenade equivalent system from Car Wars, where a motion tracker would be 1 item size and a smart gun is 3 item sizes. It's simplistic, but it does pose a bit of a problem for the Colonial Marine characters, who tend to carry a ton of gear starting out. There is a large section on spaceships, since this is a space horror game. I'm not too sold on the ship-to-ship combat, because that's something that's never been a facet of the setting. Part of the horror of the Alien universe is the isolation. Every single one of the movies, there's ever been one ship where the action took place. If you have to simulate a pirate attack or a naval battle, there are rules for them if necessary. It would work well setting up an adventure with the heavily damaged ship needing to be evacuated before it breaks apart or burns up in atmosphere, though. A large chunk of the game is abstract. Time is divided up in how long something should take. A shift can be 5 to 10 hours, a turn is 5 to 10 minutes, a round is 5 to 10 seconds. Ammunition lasts until you panic and use it all up. Distance is done by zones, which involves breaking the current area into different rooms, halls, and corridors. It keeps the flow of the game going without sweating the details. It also keeps the amount of record keeping to a minimum. Unless it's a one-shot item like a grenade, you don't know exactly when you're going to run out of a commodity. There's also a section on synthetics, since they are a major part of the Alien universe. It gives rules on how to play androids, including Ash, Bishop, Call, and David, for example. You can build them to any specialty, though combat synths are highly illegal. Still, if you want to play the black market Roy-class synthetic, have fun. Just watch out for attacked ships off the shoulder of Orion. Synths have higher stats on average and are immune to panic. However, they can't push rolls and they have mental restrictions hardwired into their programming usually. Ask your game mother before you try to play one. As it stands, Alien shows quite a bit of a promise for a new RPG. It is a licensed product, so that's a potential problem there, as I have stated in numerous videos in the past. You might love this game, and you can't wait for the next book, but if Disney yanks the license, this is all you get. The game goes with the cinematic timeline, including Prometheus and Covenant, but of course you can forget those ever happened if you want. I don't know if any of the Dark Horse comics will ever get any mention at all. I think there was one storyline in here that did come from the Dark Horse, but I might be misremembering that. But one can always hope. I'd love to see Dean and Jerry from Alien Stronghold, or see an alternate future where Newt is all grown up and hunting bugs. The game has 2 adventure types, story and campaign. Story mode is a one-shot, which makes sense for a game as lethal as this one. You don't get XP for story mode because your characters probably aren't going to live. But if you roleplay well, you can get story points, which serve as automatic successes. Campaign mode gives you XP, and you can improve your character from story to story, assuming you survive. The types of story available right now are pretty limited. You can only do bleak horror for so long before the players are going to want to play something else. That wraps up Aliens. It's a decent system, heavily focused on space survival horror, and possessing a dice mechanic built around it. There's only the main book and adventure for it right now, but hopefully that's only temporary because the game will live or die on expansions. It needs new systems, new gear, a greater delve into the corporations and governments. New bad guys would be fantastic. A book talking about the corporations and core worlds could offer a reprieve from the grimdark fatalism that the book is written around, even if the corps are far more dangerous than most alien species. Next week is the final part of the unholy trinity of RPGs, Phoenix Command, where Fatal was the prime example of a writer who shouldn't be allowed to write a game, and Cinnabar was the pinnacle of a writer who couldn't create a coherent game world. Phoenix Command represents the writer who is too obsessed with minutia for his own good. There's nothing offensive about this game. It's actually well laid out and well written, but the mechanics are so complex it's unplayable. It's no surprise that the designer is an actual NASA rocket scientist in real life. Still, the game has more tables than IKEA. If you like these videos, like and subscribe. The more people that like me, the more I get noticed, and the better chance I have at getting the Mystara Player's Guide live. But until then, I have played the Aliens board game adaptation on Newgrounds probably 1,000 times easily. Yesterday, I finally brought them all back alive.